Hello, everybody. It's Gregg Kirk here. Thank you, Christina, for inviting me to be a part of your Rise Above Lyme group. Rise Above Lyme Support and Education and Advocacy Group. I'm going to wait until a few other people join. I am recording this, so this is, we can broadcast this again. Well, actually, you can play it again. We'll share the link to the broadcast. I will be checking as best I can into the group for comments. Hi, Christina. Good. So, I'll hang out maybe a minute or two just to make sure we actually have a little bit of an audience, because part of this is answering questions. But I have a number of topics that were given to me by the Rise Above Lyme ladies, and I very much appreciate them doing a little poll. So they, both Jessica and Christina, did a poll to zero in on what you guys want to know about. So anyway, I will get started right now. I've got maybe about an hour-long presentation, but we can certainly stop and take questions at any point. Let me pull up a slide I've got. Actually, let me see about sharing here. So pardon the technical adjustments here. Let me do a share screen. There we go. Okay, hopefully you're seeing that okay. Let me see what happens when I do this. Great. Okay, thank you everyone. While I'm sharing this, I'm not able to look at questions. So I'm gonna stop the presentation every now and then to toggle back in and out to see what's going on. But my name is Gregg Kirk. I've written a book called The Gratitude Curve, which chronicles my experience with Lyme disease and healing, and actually learning from the disease. The subtitle of it is Using the Lessons of Chronic Illness to Reach Personal Empowerment. I actually went through a lot of, a big struggle. I'll take a few minutes to talk about that. I'll tell a story that probably everyone who has Lyme disease will listen to that and say, that's very close to what I went through. So back in early 2000s, 2001 or 2, I moved to Connecticut with my fiance, and we got married. And soon after, I started noticing some symptoms I couldn't put my finger on. And it's, even in the Lyme world, it's not classic symptoms. It's, I started feeling very strange after eating a meal. Like fatigued, very, very spacey. What I would get brain fog from eating a meal. I didn't know what the term brain fog meant back then, but to me, it felt like I was on drugs or I smoked something. And after just simply eating a meal, and I started to notice that certain meals bothered me more than most. Of course, the processed foods and the junk food really leveled me, and I would have to go lie down on the couch afterwards, or sometimes take a nap. I'd get headaches. So this happened with such frequency that I started seeking the help from traditional physicians. I had 2 years of tests done to me. I took radioactive pills. I had dyes injected in my body. I was poked and prodded, and had a sleep-deprived EEG where I didn't sleep for 24 hours, and they shone strobe lights in my eyes to try to make me have a seizure. I mean, I got beat up, honestly, from the tests, and to the point where I just thought, give me a diagnosis. Anything would be better than this. And And my doctors then started saying things to me like, well, I believe you that you've got symptoms, but, one of my doctors said, are you depressed? And I said, well, hold on. I think I know where you're going with this. I have symptoms and that makes me depressed. It's not the other way around. I'm not depressed and that gives me symptoms. And he still didn't listen to me. He gave me a referral to see a psychiatrist. And that's when I told him, listen, you're really not listening to me. He even said to me, your symptoms aren't life-threatening, so maybe you just learn to live with them, which was shocking to hear out of the mouth of a doctor who's been to 12 years of college and been trained to help people, took an oath to help people. Unbelievable. And it wasn't the first doctor he was the first doctor I heard who said that, but within 6 months, I heard it from another doctor at Beth Israel Hospital, a very well recommended gastroenterologist who wanted to cut a piece of my intestines out to see what was wrong with me. And I said, that sounds like a terrible idea. I was doing research and found out about leaky gut syndrome. And I said, this sounds like what I'm going through. I eat a meal and it feels like I've been poisoned. And, he said, well, let's do an endoscopy and we'll cut it, do a biopsy. And I said, this is a terrible idea. And he said, well, your symptoms aren't that bad, so maybe you just learn to live with them. And just, again, shocking stuff for me. So it wasn't until I saw a naturopath that she actually recommended I write down a week's worth of my symptoms, like a log, a diary, a week prior to me coming in. So I did. I handed it to her. She read them and she said, I can tell you right now you have Lyme disease, but we'll test you. They did a non-traditional test. So they didn't do typical Western blot or ELISA. I believe they sent it was a while ago. So I think they sent it to IGeneX, I believe. Anyway, Lyme disease, that was the diagnosis. And I thought, oh, good. At least I know what it is. I'll just treat it and get over it. And, as most of you know, that's when the real hard part started. I started with Western medicine, traditional roots, basically full antibiotics. So I started with Doxycycline. I did a week of that. I didn't know what a Herx reaction was, but I was Herxing. I came in, my doctor said, that's good. It means it's working. And gave me no advice or information on detoxing or basically just said, tough it out. You're Herxing, that you're killing the pathogens and they're releasing toxins. So tough it out. And I thought, okay, knowing what I know now, that's not good advice. When the toxins build up in your body, it's, extremely high, it can have other effects on you. It can impact your organs and even your heart. And if you do enough binders and detoxing, which we'll talk about later, you don't have to put up with that. So anyway, this is, me back in 2003 or 4, going through this. I didn't like the way things were going, so I wanted to accelerate things. So I asked to have a PICC line inserted. My first doctor said he wouldn't do it. It was too risky. And then the second doctor said he would do it. I should have listened to the first doctor because the insertion went wrong. It jabbed my heart, gave me heart damage, basically gave me a heart attack the night I got it inserted. I rolled over on it when I was asleep and I had massive heart palpitations. I thought I was going to die. So I went downstairs, left my wife in bed. I didn't tell her anything. I just went downstairs and waited to die. And when I didn't, I called the emergency hotline. As soon as they were up and ready to answer the phone at 7 a.m. And I said, here's what happened. And they said, ooh, wow, that's really bad. They really felt sorry for me. But then, the guy said, this is going to sound crazy, but you've been through the hard part. Why don't you just leave it in? You haven't even taken any antibiotics yet. So can you tough it out, is what he said. And, I did. I didn't know what else to do. So I went on antibiotics, Rocephin, IV Rocephin, and just had a really rough time on it. was underwater, just basically. My doctor, I complained of fatigue. He gave me Adderall. I complained of some pain. He gave me opiates. I was completely underwater in terms of symptoms. I started getting symptoms from the antibiotics themselves. I got a C. diff infection that leveled me, almost hospitalized me. I was throwing up and had diarrhea, and full disclosure, it gave me these hemorrhoids that were so painful. I've never experienced anything like it. I was in a fetal position for a day. Just, I didn't know what else to do. So I stuck it out. I stuck with these doctors for 6 years until I got walking pneumonia that didn't go away with treatment. So at that point, I was off the PICC lines. I was on multiple oral antibiotics, not rotating them or anything, which, as any knowledgeable LLMD or any knowledgeable physician or anybody knowledgeable in treatment will tell you, doing the same treatment for 3 months starts to have a plateau effect on the pathogens. And you need to, if you're treating for lengths of time, which is recommended with chronic Lyme, you've got to rotate. If you don't rotate and create pathogen confusion, the pathogens will not be confused. And they will do a lot of things like go into dormancy, create biofilms, migrate out of the circulatory system, do all these, hide in organs in big joints in your body that you don't want them to do. So, I was, my gut was upside down from doing all these antibiotics. I was taking probiotics, but I can tell you that's not enough. If you're on antibiotics for 6 years, it starts to really have a serious effect on your entire system, your immune system. 80% of the immune system's in your gut, and you've got no immune system if you've been on antibiotics for that long. So I was getting every cold my daughter brought home from school, and I got this pneumonia. And case in point, I had no immune system, had no way to get it out of my body. I was already on 4 antibiotics. I went to a doctor, and he prescribed me a 5th. And when that didn't work, I came back a month later, and I laughed. He didn't know I was on the other antibiotics. I told him, how is any germ alive in my body? This is the 5th antibiotic. And his eyes got big, and he said, "You're scaring me." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Because, I'm running out of ideas here. I'm just going to give you this other antibiotic." And that's when I realized I had to leave the Western medicine system. They didn't have anything for me that was helping me. It was harming me. And I gave it everything I had. I listened to everything they said. And I had to leave. So, they were telling me things like, don't do herbals for Lyme disease. They don't work. So the first thing I did was contact Dr. Zhang in Manhattan and got on the Zhang protocol. And wow, did that make me a believer in how powerful herbs can be, because I herxed way harder than I've ever herxed on the Chinese medicine that he prescribed. It got me out of the woods, it got me out of the hole that I was in, but it didn't get me where I needed to be. Eventually, I ended up doing the Cowden protocol for about 1.5 years. And during that time, I also, you'll read about it in the book, where I won't get into this, but I experienced what I would say is a miracle healing when I went to see a healer in Brazil, where I came back with no symptoms. My physical appearance changed, the whole deal. But symptoms started coming back when my lifestyle didn't change. So I went back to my stressful job, my high stress life. I wasn't watching what I was eating, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, the reason I bring all this up is I just want you to know I've been through what you've been through. I'm sure there's others whose stories is worse. There's others that's not quite as bad. But I think I pretty much paint a picture of what, from the thousands of Lyme patients I've talked to over the last 10 years, there's a lot of similarities. Doctors not listening, doctors not knowing what to do. The extended diagnosis, 2 years is about average, but I've heard of people not be diagnosed for 20 years or whatever. The cluelessness of traditional doctors on how to treat not just Lyme disease, but honestly any chronic illness. There's many doctors who don't even believe chronic Lyme is a thing. They think it's a fantasy. So my recommendation is to get away from these doctors and go to somebody, a practitioner. It doesn't have to be an MD. Honestly, there's a lot of really great practitioners who practice alternative medicine who are phenomenal at treating Lyme disease. That said, as a part of my journey, I'm not a doctor, but so when I've been helping patients with Lyme disease as a health coach now for the past 4 or 5 years. So after I got better from Lyme disease, here's what I did. I started the Ticked Off Foundation and the Ticked Off Music Fest. The Music Fest raised money initially for other foundations, but after about a year or two of doing it, so many Lyme patients showed up to the Music Fest, and just that's where I saw face to face what the problem was. And the problem was, from my opinion, you didn't need to raise money for research or awareness. Plenty of people knew about Lyme disease. And since I've been sick with Lyme disease, I'm almost for 20 years, 18 about years. There's been no movement that I know of on better diagnostics or any kind of better treatment for Lyme disease. So the research needle has not moved in 18 years. And in my opinion, that's outrageous. So millions of dollars have been, sent to research. And I personally have not seen much. I know Dr. Eva Sappi is doing great research at Yale, New Haven, or University of New Haven. And Dr. Kerry Clark, we've donated to him. He's in Florida. He's done some great research showing that Lyme disease is carried not just in the deer tick, it's in other ticks as well. But outside of that, in terms of the big stuff, a new test that's more accurate. As we all know, the Lyme tests are very inaccurate. A treatment that really covers all of the co-infections and the viruses and the parasites that are involved. Not just looking at this as a spirochete problem. So I started the Ticked Off Foundation shortly after. And the purpose of the foundation is to help, where's the problem right now? The biggest problem is people need to stay on treatment. They run out of money after they've been beat up through the diagnostic process and not having luck with early treatment. So many patients come to us bankrupt. So we help them. So we need, the point is we need donations at the foundation to help fund more patients. We're kind of like a little, like a side insurance company where, Lyme patients come in, we help them when we have funds, we give them, monthly stipends to keep them on treatment. And we also get discounts on other treatments that have worked for other patients. I've also started a website called Lyme Knowledge. It's a free resource of information about everything related to Lyme. I write a lot of blogs there. It's the website I wish I would have known about when I was sick. That's one of the things I checked off the checklist. Like, what would I have wanted when I first got sick? I would have wanted this website, limeknowledge.com. So not long after, as things were chugging along, an offer came to me out of the blue to be trained by Dr. Lee Cowden, the guy who developed the Cowden protocol that helped get me better. And it was my honor to be trained by him back in 2016. And after that happened, I started a small clinic in Connecticut called the Lyme Recovery Clinic. And there I help patients with natural treatments, but I also do energy healing. So that's another thing that figured large in my treatment. So I've been a trained Reiki practitioner since 1997. I do remote sessions as well, and I've had patients go into remission just doing the energy sessions, which is amazing. So that's one of the blocks that comes up in treatment, is sometimes it's things like parasites or other things that make patients plateau, but sometimes it's emotional things, it's energy blocks, trauma. Those kind of things can be removed actually through energy treatment. So I'm going to take a quick break. I've said a lot, and I'm going to go back to what we're going to talk about in just a second. But I'm going to just do a quick look-see to see if anybody has a question. Christina says, yes, your story sounds so similar to mine. Hi, oh, great. I see some friends on here. So fantastic. Yeah, so let me get back to it here. So, yeah, so the topics we're going to talk about today, I'll try to stay on topic now, is the importance of detoxing, special concerns for COVID-19 and Lyme, and then elements outside of medicine that can help with Lyme and chronic illness remission. So let's dig right into it. Just one last final little plug. I wrote a book called The Gratitude Curve, which describes in detail all the things I just talked about. Gives some tips on how to stay better. That's a whole other thing. Some people experience remission like I did, and I actually relapsed because I didn't pay attention to some of the things that I'll mention later. So it's important to start paying attention to your health as we get older. Let me just say that. There's a saying I've heard people say, you're either going to pay attention to your health or you're going to pay attention to your treatment. So let's get started. And I'm going to go hit the big topic right away, and I'm going to be careful about what I say because there's a lot of controversy right now about anybody saying anything related to COVID that looks like somebody saying a cure or anything like that. So I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, number one, is Lyme patients fall into the category of high risk. What do I mean? Well, some of the patients who are having a hard time, the deaths are coming from patients who have compromised immune systems. Now, a lot of the patients, it's because they're overweight or they're elderly and they have pre-existing conditions. Well, Lyme disease is a pretty huge pre-existing condition that compromises the immune system. So early on, I run a private Lyme group, and there was a number of patients in that group who came up with symptoms that looked like COVID. So we, I started recommending some supplements and some things that they could easily take along with any doctor recommendations that if they were seeing a physician. So the early symptoms of COVID are a non-productive cough, which means you're not coughing anything up. It's a deep rattling cough that sounds very dry. A dry cough is another way of putting it. I've heard this, you can't hold your breath for 15 seconds without coughing. And also, there's little to no phlegm or mucus production. Most people who do have COVID, I've talked to them who will say the same thing. It doesn't feel like anything else. Like they know when they have it. So you have high fevers and things like that. It's a different kind of feeling than your typical flu or whatever. Of course, the late symptoms are trouble breathing, persistent pain in the chest, bluish lips or face. And so that's COVID. I want to let you know about something else that has happened with some patients in my group who I've helped. It's not COVID related, but it's still a serious lung problem. It's mold related. So I've talked to some patients who thought they had COVID, started treating with their doctors, actually tested negative. I think maybe one person tested positive, whatever the case, went through the typical treatment and the cough just never went away. Everything else went away and they would go in and out of like having a fever. In every case, these patients were exposed to mold. So there's something different about mold. The mold spores actually have hooks in them. They dig into your your tissue, and they're different than a bacteria or a virus in that they don't hang on to you. The mold hangs on you worse. It's like a cactus, or a burr getting stuck on your clothes. It's hard to get out. So these things that I'm going to recommend help with that in particular. So that may be even more concerning than the COVID stuff. But I'm not making light of anything COVID related. Obviously, I know people have died from it, and it's serious. And like I said, when you get it, you pretty much know it. So these things that I'm about to show you are treatments. Many of them were used 100 years ago to fight the Spanish flu. So there's a good track record of them being effective against lung ailments in general. The first one is called Tacuna. It's a part of the Kratom protocol. It's made by Nutrimedics. It's a very good antiviral herb. You can look it up, nutrimedics.com. Takuna is the name of the herb. It comes in an alcohol tincture. You put 30 drops in water, and you take it every hour while you're in the first round of your lung infection. Another thing that you can take all these together, but honestly, I'm mentioning a number of these. Just doing 2 or 3 of these is probably enough. I've had people do all of them, like on the first day, and it's, then they get kind of Herx reactions as a result, the cytokine storm that we've all heard about. So just, take it easy. Do 2 or 3 of these, and it's a good idea. If you do have a reaction to killing the virus, you need to do some binders, things like chlorella, drinking a lot of water to get the toxins out of you, even activated charcoal every now and then if you're really, really having what you can tell is a toxin storm. Cistus tea. This is something that, as many of you may have heard of from Dr. Klinghardt. It's a phenomenal tea. It comes from the Mediterranean, Sardinia in particular. I've written many blogs on it. You can check out LymeKnowledge.com. It is an antimicrobial tea. It does not have caffeine in it. It's great at getting your gut. It's a biofilm buster. It's great at killing candida. And it's got some antiviral properties. So it's a good thing just to be drinking. You start off with 1 cup to make sure you're tolerating it and you're not going to Herx from it. And then you can go up to 5 or 6 cups per day. It's going to keep your gut right, but it's also going to help just keep any bacteria or viruses out of you. The other thing, that this was used 100 years ago. Some people call it nascent iodine or monoatomic or atomic iodine. Basically, you can find it on Amazon.com. Lugol's iodine, 2% is fine. I've seen it as high as 5 to 7%. You put a few drops of this iodine in a nebulizer, or I've put it in, if you've got an essential oil diffuser. So you fill a diffuser with a typical amount of water, you put 3 or 4 drops of iodine in it, and you can put a towel over your head, and you just, or a vaporizer. A lot of people use vaporizers. Put several drops of iodine. You find the right amount yourself. I mean, depending upon how much water you've got. If you've got a big tub of water and you're blowing it with a vaporizer, you may have to use more like 10 drops. You have to figure it out, and you'll know if it's too much, it's going to possibly sting when you inhale it. All right, so then pour it out. Do half as many. And the point is, you got to be able to. You'll smell the iodine, inhale it deep into your lungs, and this will loosen, especially that mold-related. The spores that are in your bronchi. It'll knock out any virus, any bacteria. It's a phenomenal thing to get your health back. Iodine, Lugol's iodine is the best. Here's another one from 100 years ago. It's called magnesium chloride. Just look that up. Go on Amazon.com. There's some really good capsules you can buy. 3 grams every 6 hours. One warning about it: magnesium. Most magnesiums can be laxative, so you will definitely have to go to the bathroom. So if you take, 3 capsules that are 1,000 milligrams each, That's 3 grams. You're probably going to need to visit the bathroom within the hour. Just warning about that. But if you can do 3 grams every 6 hours, that's really, really going to boost your immune system and knock out. It has a antimicrobial effect as well. And a lot of us were hearing this early on in the COVID days, you know, and anybody who knows anything about building the immune system and taking high doses of vitamin C, this has come from, you know, there's plenty of studies on vitamin C and how it helps your health. The best kind of vitamin C is liposomal, and that kind has been coated so it doesn't bother your stomach. Vitamin C can also have a laxative effect on you. So, but if you take the liposomal, you'll tolerate it better. Lipospheric is another term. It's the same stuff, liposomal, lipospheric. Take at least 6 to 8 grams, evenly dosed throughout the day. So maybe 2 grams 4 times a day, or whatever. So all of these things can be very helpful. Also, vitamin D3, zinc gluconate, vitamin A, and liposomal glutathione. All these things, if you're a Lyme patient, you're probably already taking them anyway. You can just take them in a little higher doses. And the point is here is stay with these treatment doses until your symptoms subside. The only thing I'll say about these treatments is nobody's died. So I've given these treatments to people and no reported deaths. So that's the only claim I'll make. All right, so enough of that. I'm going to stop for now and see if we've got any other questions, and hopefully we haven't been shut down. So, all right, we're looking good. Okay, let me get back to the meeting controls and okay, moving on. In my clinic, I've developed a 3-pronged approach to treating not just Lyme disease, but other chronic illnesses. The point being is with chronic illness, there's 3 things to address. I'm going to start from the right to the left. The pathogen load. Most chronic illness is caused by some sort of pathogenic infection or an invasion. It could be a parasite, could be virus, it could be bacteria, it could be all the above. With Lyme disease, it's really all of the above. Bacteriophages even, those are the cross between like a virus and a bacteria. All those things are on the table with Lyme disease. So addressing the pathogen load, this may not seem like brilliant news to you. Most people understand if you've got an infection, you attack it. You would be surprised that that's all some people do. Most of my doctors, that was the only approach. So imagine those other 2 balls gone, or balloons, whatever you want to call them. So I would call that an unbalanced approach. We'll go to the other balloon on the left, detoxing. We're going to spend a good deal of time talking about that. If you only treat and you go aggressive about it and you don't do anything about detoxing, you're going to start herxing really bad. If you herx really bad, you're not going to be able to treat anymore. And it might cause more problems than you already have now. Like I mentioned earlier, it can cause an impact on your organs. It can cause all kinds of trouble, raise your blood pressure, serious side effects if you don't do something about it. The good news is there's plenty of things you can do about it. And then the third thing is your immune system. And really what I mean by this is your gut health. So you got to balance all of these balloons at once, treat the pathogen load, detox, and then help your gut out. And so that you can start building your immune system back up. The point being is you'll be able to take your foot off the gas pedal with getting rid of the pathogen load when your immune system can start to take over. And that's how patients go into remission. When their own immune system takes care of the problem it takes care of the infection itself, that's really when remission takes place. So let's talk about detoxing. So the toxins released from the pathogen load during and independent of treatment causes severe inflammation, also known as a cytokine storm. We've been hearing a lot about that related to COVID. So you can have a herx when you're not on treatment. I've had patients say that to me, like, well, why would that be? Well, just normal activity of the pathogen load. Pathogens do die, they have a natural lifespan. And if their cell walls get broken, they'll release toxins in your body and cause a toxic event. Just a little bit of definition. What are cytokines and what is a cytokine storm? So cytokines are part of the toxin cocktail that the pathogens release. Cytokines are inflammation causing substances in the body. So if they're all over your body, you'll get full body inflammation. Which what happens to your body when it's inflamed? All kinds of symptoms. And it can be very confusing because those symptoms can cause other problems, rheumatoid arthritis type issues. There's 300 illnesses that these cytokine storms can cause. So we won't spend a lot of time talking about that, but just other than just addressing, that's the problem. You got a lot of toxins, you got a lot of inflammation causing things in your body. You need to get them out. What are some of these symptoms I mentioned? Well, so swelling, edema, swollen lymph nodes, fatigue, brain fog, depression, feeling of hopelessness, anger, skin eruptions. You name it. Other illnesses can be the cause, the side effects. So treating the root issue, in other words, the pathogen load, while aggressively detoxing can be the road to success, as I mentioned earlier. So the problem is a lot of Lyme patients have problems getting the toxins out of their body. So MTHFR is a problem with a lot of Lyme patients I talk to. Mast cell granulation, histamine intolerances, all kinds of, these are genetic things that make it really hard for some patients to get the toxins out of their body. So they need extra help. And it's crazy. I've seen a couple posts from some doctors on Facebook saying, nobody needs to boost your immune system. That's ridiculous. Nobody needs to do anything about detoxing. Your body was built to detox. You don't need it. And to me, that's like saying you don't ever need a laxative. Well, in the course of your life, you need help going to the bathroom just because things go wrong. And it's the same kind of thing. In fact, going to a bowel movement is a huge sign. If you're constipated, you are toxic because you're not pushing the toxins out of your body. Dr. Cowden actually said to our class when he was teaching us, he said, if you're not having 2 to 3 bowel movements a day, I consider you constipated and toxic. So when you're treating with Lyme disease, it's the same kind of thing. So I highly recommend enemas. Coffee enemas is one of the things I found out on my own. No doctor told me about them. I did research about the Gerson therapy and did my own coffee enemas. I think they're phenomenal. I've written blogs about them. They filter your blood. They're like a form of dialysis. They open your bile ducts. They're very, very good. The first time I did a coffee enema, they changed my vision. Colors got brighter. It was unbelievable. I've also developed Cystis T enemas. So we were talking about Cystis T. It's a great thing for people who are fighting lung infections and so forth, but it's a phenomenal thing for Lyme patients to get on as well, to help get your gut right and to knock out biofilms. So I thought, why not, if it knocks out the biofilms at the top of the intestinal tract, why not put it in the lower intestines and see how that does? And I've got patients doing that, and it's really, really helping them, especially the patients who are allergic to coffee or have anxiety issues and don't want to deal with caffeine. They don't want to feel the nervous and the anxiety inducing feelings that you can get from coffee. So Cystis T enemas. So I look it up, LymeKnowledge.com. It's the most recent blog I wrote about Cystis T enemas. It also gives information on how to do enemas in general. So, even if you just do a lemon water enema, so you squeeze the juice out of 2 or 3 lemons and put it in about a half-gallon container and keep it in you for a few minutes. Even that's good. So the point being is there's more than one type of toxin here that we're talking about. So let's talk about the ones that affect Lyme patients the most. You've probably heard that heavy metals are a big deal with Lyme patients. You probably have tested, most Lyme patients test high in a lot of different heavy metals. The thing about heavy metals is those are the toxins you don't want to be too aggressive about. I've heard too many people doing EDTA and some or IV chelation for metals is not a great idea. It moves the metals too quickly. Not all of them get pulled out, and it basically distributes the metals throughout your body. And I've heard of people having week to 2 week long herxes just from the chelation. So what's a better thing to do? Ionic foot baths are a phenomenal way of removing metals. Also, Results RNA has some really good spray, a spray zeolite that's good. Zeolite in general is a really good metal mover. It's gentle. Just don't go too fast on it. Most people have water-soluble toxins, so that's an easy one. Those are easy to get out. Dr. Cowden recommends drinking 3 quarts of water per day, and that doesn't mean drink 1 quart of water, chug-a-lug like at breakfast, another chug-a-lug at lunch, and another one at dinner. It's evenly spaced throughout the day. Literally, you're walking around with a bottle of water, and you're taking sips about every 10 to 15 minutes. Keeping yourself hydrated is one of the best ways to keep toxins from becoming fat-soluble toxins. That's the third type of toxin. The fat-soluble toxins are the ones that settle into your fat cells and your tissue. And you have fat-soluble toxins when this is your answer to this question. I've asked several patients, like once they get on treatment, like, are you starting to have a herx? And they've said, how would I know? I'm herxing all the time. So if you're herxing all the time, like I was before I did my first coffee enema, you probably have fat-soluble toxins. If you've been treating for any length of time and really haven't done any detoxing, you probably got, some of them have settled in your tissue. So there's a number of things to do. Coffee enemas are a good one. Sweating them out with an far infrared sauna. And those are probably the 2 best ones. Movement, lymph massage is another one you got to be careful about, because if you go too fast on that, it's like the heavy metal detox. You'll move the toxins around and you'll have herxes. But sweating and coffee enemas are some of the best ways to get the fat-soluble toxins out. Again, I've written a blog about it on LymeKnowledge.com. So here's a couple things. This just tends to come up with a lot of Lyme patients. They get stuck. All right, let's face it. It happened with me. And like I said, if you stay on the same treatment for more than 3 months, you're probably just going to plateau anyway. But here's some things, some reactions I have. What if I'm stuck in Lyme treatment? My first question is, did you give the protocol a minute? Because I have some new patients who've only been sick maybe a month or 2, or maybe they've been sick for a while, but they've really never treated. And I get them on a treatment, and after a week they're like, it didn't work. I'm like, give it a minute. You need to be, if you've had chronic Lyme disease for more than several years, it may take 6 to 9 months for you to get anywhere close to reaching remission. So give it a minute, but also understand that doing the exact same thing for more than 3 months is not recommended. Another question to ask if you're stuck is, have you treated for parasites? As shocking as it was for me to believe, I had parasites, and I basically got through the Lyme treatment pretty easily, but then I started noticing things. So let me tell you what my symptoms were, and most people who have parasites will say, oh, maybe I better get tested. I'll tell you though that the tests for parasites are not great. They're better than Lyme, but I've had people, unfortunately, because I help patients with this stuff, I get to see pictures of people's poop. People showing me, unannounced, oh, is this a parasite? And like, picture of their toilet, like, oh man. Anyway, so, how do you know if you have them? Well, there's a couple of signs that you may see them in the toilet for one thing, but you may feel very bloated after eating. Now that could be a yeast issue, but here's the one that really affected me. I would wake up in the morning anxious, almost feeling like a buzzing in my gut. I felt like the anxiety was just coming from my gut. That is parasites. You may feel some movement or flipping in your gut every now and then, but anxiety and even a little bit of heart flipping is definitely a sign, an anecdotal sign of parasite presence. If you eat, especially if you eat dairy and sugar, and you just kind of get knocked out from that by feeling bloated and tired and fatigued, those were my symptoms. So your block may not be any of those things. It may not be parasites. It may be a mood thing. So how's your mood? What's your focus? Are you so focused on your illness that is now your new identity? Are you becoming a negative person? Are you coming on Facebook and complaining about everything and getting in fights with people? You wouldn't believe how much of a bearing that has on you getting well. The longer you stay in fights with people, or it may not even be social media. It may just be you live in a toxic environment with a spouse or a significant other or just family members who have it out for you. Of course, mold is another situation. That's actually not mentioned on this list, but living in a moldy environment can just stop your treatment and your progress in its tracks. Have you had a trauma in your life? You may not even have any of these problems, but you had a severe problem, a severe trauma that happened early on in your life it's still weighing on you. And this kind of goes back to the, where's your mood? What's your focus? If your focus is on testing, and I want to be clear about this, testing has its role, its importance. But I get some patients who they're starting the treatment and they're like, okay, now I want to get a blood test to see how I'm doing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I want to get a Western blot test to see how much, or I want to get a CD57 test to see what my antibodies are. And, those tests are so inaccurate. So, case in point, I had a CD57 test done in the middle of my treatment. I was still feeling lousy. My doctor said, congratulations, it looks like you're in remission. I said, what are you talking about? Your CD57 numbers are good. So I still feel like crap. So anyway, don't get so wrapped up in your testing and your focus on just start focusing on moving on with your life. So let's talk about that. What are adjustments you can make? So let's just not even talk about treatment right now. What are the things, and this is coming from somebody, this is literally, I did all of these things. I paid attention to all these things. So if you want to hear from somebody who got better, that's me. And I had to do these things. And of course, prior to this illness, I thought most of this stuff was a bunch of crap or woo-woo, or, isn't that what people take yoga classes do? Like, what does this pertain to me? But now I've also become, an energy healer as well. So I noticed this in my practice that, number one, if the patient doesn't invest in their own healing, they're not going to get better. We're used to, as a society, especially with acute illnesses, short-term illnesses, that You get sick, you go to the doctor tells you what to do. He gives you some medicine, you go home, you take it. That's your investment. That's it. You don't have to do anything else. Here's the thing. Chronic illness is nothing like that. It is the long haul. It is the life-changing event that's come into your life to literally change your life. So that's the news. It's good or bad. And in the beginning, it's bad. It was bad for me. I resisted that, you know. Nobody was telling me that. Was my experience. All of the first, 10 years of my treatment were horrible, life-threatening, awful, wanted to die, praying to die. I didn't want to commit suicide, but I didn't want to live anymore with that quality of life. But I was forced to invest in my own healing and treatment because my doctors were not interested in what I was going through. Honestly, I mean, that's the honest truth. So I left the Western medicine system. I started, going to some other LLMDs, but quite honestly, I got myself better from Lyme disease. No doctor really helped me. That's the truth. So some of you may agree and say, oh my God, yes, that's what I'm going through. So, reach out to me. I'll try to help you. But that's the reality. I can count good Lyme literate doctors on one of my hands in the entire world. I mean, seriously, it's a tough road to hoe. So part of this illness, though, that I recognize is changing you, and paying attention to what you're eating and how you're leading your life. So, that's the second thing. Listen to what your body is telling you and reduce your mental input on healing comparisons. In other words, this person did this, but I did that. How come they got better and I didn't? That stuff will drive you crazy. Don't feed into that. And what we're talking about earlier about testing and so forth. And I have to say, I've got a bug up my butt about this. People telling me, oh, evidence-based, what you're talking about is not evidence-based. There wasn't a peer-reviewed study done of that. And, I had a discussion with a registered nurse years ago. And I said, well, I've been helping people with Lyme disease and, we've been using this particular herb. Well, there's no study on that. And the studies say it doesn't work. And I said, well, I'm telling you the truth that we use this herb and these people are getting better. And they're herxing from it, which proves that it's working. And we've isolated it. It's definitely that thing. I won't believe it until a study's done. And I said, so I guess you're not believing what I'm saying, but I'm telling you dozens and dozens of people. Now it's just anecdotal. Like, well, it's real world experience, so I don't know what to say to people like that. And I understand everybody has their own belief system and I respect that. But when you do something and it works and other people do it and it works, I don't know why you wouldn't pay attention to that. So the third thing here, this is a big thing and may not come as good news to some of you, but this is really, really a huge impact on treatment and getting better, is radically changing your diet. So just look at it this way, if the diet that you've been on has gotten you to where you are now, or it's one of the contributing factors, then you're definitely going to have to change. So it doesn't mean go on fad diets. Should I do keto? Should I do paleo? Should I be a vegetarian? Honestly, I've noticed the best results from Dr. Diadamo has created something called the Eat Right for Your Blood Type diet. So what I like about this, and it's not even the end all be all, but I'll just say this. What I like about it is it doesn't tell you to do a specific diet other than, what's your genetic predisposition. So, and that's really you're found by your blood type. And he's got, his book, Eat Right for Your Blood Type, or he's got a website, you can check all that out. It's pretty amazing how it's almost like reading your horoscope. When you know your blood type and you find it out and you find out what you should be eating, it gives character traits and behavior habits. I mean, just it's unbelievable. So basically, some people should eat more meats, like the O blood types, and other patients should be vegetarian, like the A blood types. But the ABs and the Bs are somewhere in between. They're kind of more or less the paleo, a mixture of complex carbs and leafy greens and a little bit of animal protein, but not, specific things. Like, for instance, I'm the B negative blood type, and they warn me against chicken. Chicken has something called lidocaines, or I think that's what they're called. I may have that wrong. And it's poisonous to me. And, it's not strong poison, but I noticed that when I stopped eating chicken, I felt better and I had less kind of like inflammation results. So, and it's funny too, because most patients where we go through this and find out what their blood type is, and what their diet is, they're already kind of on it. Their intuition or what their cravings are have already directed them to the right diet. But let's just, get real about a few things. You can't, if you're treating Lyme disease, here's the things you should not eat. Refined sugar. I mean, you're not serious about your treatment if you're eating refined sugar, I hate to say. Dairy. I know people say, oh, well, I need to eat yogurt because I'm taking antibiotics. Because the amount of probiotics in yogurt is negligible, and most yogurts have a lot of sugar in them. And number two, dairy itself, just the dairy, not forget it, if there's any sugar in it, it feeds parasites and pathogens. So you don't want to feed your illness. So sugar and dairy are the worst things you could eat. Some people, most people should really be off of gluten, and it's not so much the gluten that's in the flour. It's the glyphosates that are the treatments, the herbicides and the bug killers that still remain in the grains. They're all over the grains in the United States. And then soy and corn have the same issues. They have a lot of glyphosate in them. So those are really bad. They're inflammatory causing, even cancer causing. So, it gets down to eating an organic diet. It's usually a mixture of greens and a little bit of animal protein. Use natural remedies and supplements. That's, I gave it a good go, going the pharmaceutical route. And pharmaceuticals, I'm not saying they're 100% bad. They do help people. But with Lyme disease, I hear the story too many times of, a patient is depressed and is having trouble sleeping, and a doctor will give them like Klonopin. And then they're addicted to Klonopin. And then they have symptoms worse than the symptoms that made them go to the doctor from the Klonopin. It's horrible situations I hear people get into. So let's talk about the stuff that is not physically related. What's your mental state? Pay attention to it. Release your negative emotions, increase your positive emotions, which I said it like it's an easy thing to do, but you really need to pay attention to that. I even, talking about things that you put in your body, what are you watching, on TV or social media or whatever? If you're watching stressful shows, like even horror movies and things like that, they told us when I was in my healing retreat, they said, don't watch stressful things. Like horror movies are the worst thing you can watch. Your nervous system doesn't understand that what you're watching isn't real, even though your brain does. And you'll have a fight or flight reaction to it. And so it's true. So try not to watch those horror movies. Try not to watch the news or, anything that's going to upset you. Watch comedy shows. Watch things that make you happy. Listen to music that you love. And I'll just tell you a quick story about how important that was for me. My wife and I was in the worst of my Lyme struggle, and my wife and I watched an hour-long stand-up routine by one of our favorite comedians. And when it was over, all we were doing was laughing for an hour. And when it was over, I forgot I was sick. I mean, and when it happened again, I thought, wait a minute, that's like medicine. If I watch this comedian who's hilarious for an hour, I'm not sick during that hour. What is going on there? So I started looking at it as a medicine. I just made myself laugh all the time, listen to music that made me feel awesome. And, these are little things that you can add to your routine that is like a medicine. Another thing that I notice is having something to look forward to every day. If you're in the state of hopelessness, that you're in a hole, you need to start looking above the hole. How are you going to get out? If you're, having a hard time with your treatment, you need to start looking outside, just do your treatment, do your physical treatment, find one that's good for you and keep doing it, but paying attention to your emotional state, making yourself happy, and then setting some goals outside your treatment of, what do you want to do? Take a vacation or do, work on something that means something to you, that takes some time, that you are looking forward to every day. Because if all you're doing is focusing on your physical aches and pains and what pills you're taking or what medications you're taking every day, and that's your day, that's terrible. I know, because that's where I was. So it's vital that you get your mind out of that area and towards the land of the living. And part of that is starting by accept where you are. I know there's a lot of patients I talk to, a lot of patients I see, and who are this, fight, you resist. And that's a good thing to get you up on your feet. But there's a point when you have to realize that if you're not getting anywhere with that mentality, then something's wrong. What is it? Look inward. What is this? Maybe you need to release. And that's when I started getting better. So I was the fighter, I was fighting everything. And then I gave up. It wasn't long after I had the heart attack where I just thought, I've done it all. This is not working for me. So I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to give up. And not long after doing that, this kind of releasing moment, things started getting better for me. I can't explain why. It sounds supernatural, but really that's what happened. So I think it's an important thing I experienced an energy shift, more or less, of letting go of, all these things. And part of letting go is, this is going to sound crazy to some people, but your life. A lot of people are like, oh, this has ruined my life and it's destroyed my life. Yeah, it did that to me too. And I lost my identity. I had this moment where I was in my basement in the middle of my Lyme struggle, and I found a jacket that I used to wear, and I put it on, and I looked at myself in the mirror. I just burst into tears because I wasn't that person anymore. I wanted to go back. And then I thought about it, like, I mentioned it to a friend of mine who said something really wise to me. I said, I wish I could go back to the way I was then, and the way I felt, all that kind of stuff. And basically this person said to me, why settle for that? Why not, make a new you, like the $6 million man. We can rebuild him and improve him, make him better than he ever was. And I was like, oh, wow. So that's when I started to think differently, that maybe, I started using this analogy of my life was burning down. My life is burning. Everything about me is burning down. My job, my health, my relationships, all this stuff. And then I thought, well, you know what? Fires are pretty good for forests. Forest fires are like a thing that happens to a forest to burn away the dead wood, and it creates room for new growth. And I'm like, well, what if that's happening to me? What if I'm actually being pointed to a better place for me? And that when I let go and started to see where I was being pointed, that's when everything changed for me, honestly. And it wasn't like one day it happened. It just began. So let's talk about this acceptance. I posted this on Facebook a few years ago, and it triggered some people. You either get bitter, or you get better. It's that simple. You either take what has been dealt to you and allow it to make you a better person, or you allow it to tear you down. The choice does not belong to fate, it belongs to you. And there's some people, a couple of people who are like, screw you, you got better. So that it's easy for you to say. I'm like, it is not easy for me to say. I live this. So listen to what I'm saying. God damn it. This happened to me. I was bitter. I was in the middle of sickness. I hated everything and everybody and everything that was happening to me. I got in arguments. I was flipping people off in traffic. Life sucked. But I got taken all the way down, all the way to where I wanted to die. And then I came back up and I was still alive. I was still here. And my life got burnt down so hard that I was like, what do I do now? And I thought, well, maybe I'll just live the rest of my life not being pissed off. What does that feel like? Because I tried that on for size and it sucked. So I started being grateful, for some of the things that were still around in my life. My family was still around, my wife and my daughter. I had a dog, all these things. And it just started building from there. My heart got bigger. It was like the Grinch, his heart grew 20 sizes or whatever. And it just started to build. And then I really, the book, The Gratitude Curve, is I was grateful for Lyme disease, burning my life down. That may seem insane to some people, but that's how you get over an illness, is when you embrace it. You look it straight on. It's like, you're having a nightmare and the monster is chasing you in the dream. And then what about if you turn around and look it in the face? And what are you going to teach me, monster? I'm not afraid of you. That's what I did. And that's what people get better do, is you face it and just like, okay, what are you here to teach me? And the illness, what did it teach me? Everything I was doing was toxic in my life. My food choices. I was drinking, I was having fun, but I was drinking too much. I had a toxic lifestyle. I was working in a place where I didn't belong. And I was getting, in fights and with people at work, and it was putting pressure on me to earn a living, and, all of this just horrible stuff. When all that was shifted, and now look what I'm doing. I'm helping people every day. That's what I do. I lead a perfect purpose-driven life where all I'm doing is helping people all day. And people say things to me like, God bless you, you saved my life. Like, how often did I hear that before? I hear that every week now. It's a blessing. So it's all about the focus. So stop, paying attention. Let's talk about the focus here. So move from your doubt of your symptoms to being Lyme, because there's still some people who are in that, do I even have Lyme? I don't know. We'll just start treating. So start treating and move from the treatment to moving forward with your life, like I said. And you may have to leave that old life behind. I see a lot of people mourning about how their lives are, their old life, is ruined. Well, look at that. That old life may, as fun as it was, may have been toxic for you. And that you need to look at a new life. And you're being pointed to it. You're being pointed to this new life. So stop resisting it. Stop fighting it. It may be a blessing in disguise. So just the general roadmap for this is employ your physical treatments. Find the right ones. The natural ones tend to be the best. And employ treatment for mental, emotional, spiritual symptoms. So what do I mean by that? Your traumas, your anger, if you've got anger, or maybe you feel like something is out of your control and it's a spiritual thing. And that's what I help patients with energy healing. And like I said, we've had patients, it wasn't their fault. This woman had a trauma in a past life, and it came through in a session, and she had a physical remission immediately. It doesn't often happen, but sometimes that's what she needed. And she brought in a file, an inch thick of all the doctors and all the tests she'd had. And I just looked at the file and said, I believe you, you're sick. Now let's get started on finding what's going on. And it was a past life, where she had a trauma, and in particular on her shoulder. And so not only did she have Lyme, but she also had a rotator cuff tear, and she was scheduled for surgery. And we did this session, and we found that she had a shoulder broken like 400 years before in this specific life. And she started feeling, during the session, she started feeling heat on her shoulder. And then I saw her, for an in-person session a week later, and she looked completely different. She said, you're going to love this story. I went in to get a CAT scan done on my shoulder. My doctor did the CAT scan. He came in and he said, we were going to measure the tear for surgery, but it's gone. You don't need surgery. What did you do? She said, well, you're never going to believe it anyway. But, I had an energy session done. And she looked at me. She looked so healthy. She said, and by the way, I don't have Lyme disease anymore. It went away. And that, I can't even explain that. That's, how hard it is to get Lyme into remission. And it just happened, in this remote energy session. So anyway, that could be something for you. And if it is, reach out and contact me. I'm happy to help people with that. Remission doesn't always happen, but usually if there's an energy, emotional, spiritual problem, that can be what's holding some people back with Lyme treatment. And then the final thing is look for your opportunity in this situation. Seriously, you're being handed something, it could be a gift. Not could be, it usually is a gift. As horrible as it may be feeling to you right now, what's your opportunity in this situation? And, mine was to help other patients and to help me grow as a person by letting all of this go, not hanging on to anything, letting everything pass. So I'm going to take a quick second here now to see if we've got questions. I've done a lot of talking. Are there any questions? Preach it, Brother Gregg. Thank you, Emily. Midnight in UK. Thank you, UK, Alec, for joining. Christina, do you treat for parasites along with the full moon? Yeah, so that's a great question. So the full moon is when, as Christina understands, that's when the parasites are active. Other pathogens can be active too, but it's very well known for those who treat parasites that the full moon is when they come out to play and they mate and reproduce, whatever they do. It's a great time to treat for parasites. But don't just treat during the full moon. Treat round the clock. I would say parasites are one of the hardest things to get out of your body, so some of the tapeworms and other parasites. So treating, it took me 1.5 years, and I was going nonstop. And at the time, I didn't even know about anything different happened during the full moon. I was just going full guns the whole time. So there's many different treatments. Microbe Formulas actually makes something called the Full Moon Kit that I highly recommend. Both of the doctors who run that website are phenomenal, and they know what they're talking about. They know how to treat Lyme, and they know the correlation between Lyme and intestinal parasites. So the Full Moon Kit on microbeformulas.com, phenomenal treatment. That's a good place to start. The mimosa pudica in that in particular is unbelievable at pulling parasite bodies and other things that don't belong in your body out of you. It's unbelievable. I'm going to stop sharing here. Yeah, there we go. So let me see if, yes, anything else? All right, nerve damage. Okay, so there's a question about nerve damage. Okay, another good question. What do you do about nerve damage? The best thing to do about nerve damage is continue treating so it doesn't get worse. But lion's mane mushroom extract. Lion's mane mushroom extract has something called NGF. It's nerve growth factor. It's there are other things that have it, but lion's mane mushroom extract is amazing at it. Host defense. Go to hostdefense.com. Look up lion's mane mushroom extract. Take that 1 to 2 times a day. It's not very expensive. Lion's mane can grow back brain cells and nerve cells and nervous system repair. It's phenomenal. So stay on it for a couple of months. You'll start to notice a difference. It's one of those things where you don't just take it once and then boom, you have a result. It's it takes time to grow things back, to grow the tissue that's been damaged, the nerve tissue. So this is, lion's mane is one of the few things that can actually do that. So I see that I have been talking my butt off for over an hour and 15 minutes. Are there any other questions? Nerve pain in my face as well. Yeah, so I would recommend, Andrea, lion's mane mushroom extract. For pain in particular, you can take Kratom. I sell some of these things on my website on LymeRecoveryClinic.com. So facial pain, you guys are having facial pain. Yeah, try the lion's mane mushroom extract. It's not particularly for pain. It is for the nerve damage that may be related to it. But Kratom is another substance that's a non-opioid pain reliever. There's many different strains of it. There are, I'll just quickly go through it. There's red, green, white, and now I've got a yellow. So it depends on what you're looking for. All of them help with pain, but some of the other strains actually give you a little bit of energy, which can be too much for people who've got anxiety. So that's I recommend probably starting with the red. So taking the red Kratom, 1 teaspoon of it. It tastes terrible. It tastes like dirt, but it can help with the pain. And then if you take the ongoing lion's mane mushroom extract, I'll just tell you straight up. Most of the patients in my clinic, I just get them on lion's mane and cistus tea just before they even start treating. I get them on that for about a week to 10 days. And many of them, just 50% of their symptoms go away. So I would say most Lyme patients who are watching this, just start with those two, just as a supportive measure, and then approach the pathogen load, and then pay attention to the detoxing, and you'll be on some good footing. Okay, I think I've talked enough. I really appreciate Christina and Jessica for inviting me. I'd be happy to come back and talk in any more detail about some of the other things that maybe I didn't go into much detail about. So thank you again. Come visit me at greggkirk.com. That's GREGGKIRK.com, or LymeRecoveryClinic.com. If you need help with treatment, I'm just got to be honest with you right now, we're very low on funds, but the tickedofffoundation.org is where you can get some help from us. If you're just looking for good information on the latest treatments, the latest things that are going on in the Lyme world, then go to LymeKnowledge.com. And of course, this great group that Jessica and Christine have started, the Rise Above Lyme group, is a great place just to get information. I'm here all the time answering questions, and I write a lot of blogs, so I post a lot of them in this group. So great group, got my full support. You guys are doing a great job. Okay, well, thank you. Hopefully I've answered as many questions as we're burning issues for people, but I've got this recorded, so I will share it as needed, but I think you can actually come back to the group and rewatch this because it was a Facebook Live. So I'm going to sign off now. Thank you. God bless everyone. I wish for the best for all of you in your treatment, and that it does become a gift that you see and that you really enjoy, and it is a life-changing, transformative moment for you as it was for me. God bless.